new China. Basically, you can see from this chart, obviously, before we can look at its future, we kind of have to look at its past. And in this historical view of the political events and the economic events, you can definitely see some interesting trends. But this was the Cultural Revolution. This was when Mao Zedong dies. The Tiananmen Square protests. So as you can see, when Tiananmen Square hit, they were already beginning to ascend. But it really has been, basically the Deng Xiaoping administration and the movements they did for the special economic zones that were established, and that was like Shenzhen and those types of things all became possible in these special economic zones. And that's where really they did these, sort of capitalist experiments that eventually unleashed their creativity and became the model for what the country is today. So, as you can see, the rest is history. But in 2017, they came out with this the 2030 vision. In 2015, they had come out, just 2 years before they came out with their AI 2030 vision. They had come out with their Made in China 2025, which is which was to turn China from like the factory of the world to sort of a smart, lean manufacturing, and then with AI, it just completely took a different, you know, level of speed, and now that's like their whole vision. So they are doing really well in terms of how much they're investing and what they're doing and their country policies, and we're going to look at that in this presentation. This is what that translates to, in terms of comparison with other, you know, with other indices. But as you can see, the China growth has been staggering. And if that's what, like, if this was a stock market chart, it kind of shows you where you want to invest your money, no? And so that's why China became so popular for so many companies. The problem now is that that is changing, and we're going to see a little bit later in this presentation some of the U-turns, because China is starting to, be more selective about who they let into the country. But this is a view, before we get there, this is a view of the GDP for the entire world. You can see that the United States, there's a golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules, and this is the basically how the gold is divided. So right now between Europe and the United States, it's been, they've been like the dominant player. But look at what happens when I adjust for this is very interesting. The chart on the left is an adjustment for PPP, which is the purchasing parity. So it actually adjusts for how much you can actually buy in country at the prices of the country. So as you can see, once you adjust and you go to a PPP model, which is a purchasing parity model, the outlook completely changes. And that kind of shows you the secret of of a good life, no? You 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 make you make you make money, but you spend little of it. And in the US and Europe, that's not really the case. You're making more money, but you're spending a lot more. And at the end of the day, that doesn't really work out. I mean, look at Mexico. Mexico almost doubles. So $1.22 trillion GDP becomes a $2.5 trillion GDP, because we're better off than freaking Saudi Arabia, because things are less expensive here. So it's going to be interesting. But that's part of the solution for Mexico going forward, because for the U.S. to compete with China, in China and India, things are still cheap, and there's still enough labor to make artificial intelligence work on a massive scale. In the US, that's not the case anymore. The US has a deficit of data science and artificial intelligence and machine learning positions. Right now, they cannot fill them fast enough. The salaries are going through the roof. And if you want a senior person for, artificial intelligence, machine learning programs, that could be like a project leader at a high level, reporting to a C level, executive, that person is running currently in the United States at $250,000. That's really, really expensive for those types of positions. So, China has done amazing things, and the connectivity, when you think about that at the turn of the century, around the dot com, you know, 2000, the year 2000, they had 10 million people on the internet. 10 million people. And now it's 854 million. It is an amazing feat of engineering, and just I mean, any way you look at it. But yeah, the numbers are going to just continue to grow. And in the context of the Internet of Things, with with an explosion of devices, that's why for 2025, the projection that GSMA has is on basically, look at the size of the Asia Pacific, IoT, which is 10.9 billion. That's amazing. So definitely, that's why the center of gravity, we say that the center of gravity is moving to Asia, because they are going to be the ones that have the gold, and all the products and services and content are going to be made for them. This is what 60 seconds on China's internet looks like. But it is, I mean, the volumes are just, it is really something else. That is why, in this new AI era, data data is like electricity. It's like gold. It's like petroleum, and China is the new Saudi Arabia, because they definitely have the biggest data sets that you could find out there. This is what I mentioned, that the policy that came out in 2015, moving China from the world's factory to the smart factory of the world, and they are well on their way, because 2 years later after this, they came out with that sweeping, 2030 vision, after the DeepMind beat the best Go player in the world. And of course, you guys would have to understand what Go means in China. But Go, the game of Go in Asia in general, is a revered game. It is. It was considered something of a, like almost like a martial art. And when that computer, Google's DeepMind computer, beat Lee Sedol in a match watched by hundreds of millions of people in Asia, I mean, over there, it was like the World Cup, no? And that prompted President Xi Jinping to come out with that 2017, you know, outlining a vision of world dominance in AI by 2030, and that really made the difference. Asia has exploded in terms of the unicorns that it has, the company that it's launching, and the U.S. is still the leader, but China is catching up very quickly. And not to mention 11/11. 11/11 is their is their Black Friday of sorts. It's called Singles Day, and it's the 11th of November every year. And this is the amount of money. So this is just so you guys get perspective. This is multiples of what is sold. I think it's 6 or 7 times what is sold on Black Friday. So the volumes are just amazing, and the growth is nothing short of exponential. So that's kind of what's coming in the next few years. Keep projecting that chart, and if you understood that right now it already is multiples of what Black Friday is, can you imagine in 10 years what that will be? China has also invested a lot of money in terms of their infrastructure, and the speed at which they're building it is unreal. It's uncanny. This is a map of 2008, 2018, and 2020. And look at, I mean, the difference between 2018 and 2020 just blows my mind. But yeah, they were able to do a lot of new connections and links, and basically those high speed lines above 300 kph, they're no joke. They're experimenting with some of the fastest trains in the world, and at some point, I don't know, they're really going to start competing with airports in terms of speed, because they go, you get point to point, and without having to go through so many airport security hassles. But it's amazing what they've built. This is how it looks like when you look at the whole country. So you can see that they're really getting to there's still a lot to map, but they're really getting there. They're really, really getting there. And they're taking, obviously, they're building the conventional lines. If you look at the gray, and those are the conventional lines, then you can see the green that they're building, across their existing network, and then growing that significantly. So what does this mean for you, for the rest of us and the rest of the world? That means there's going to be a power shift. The power shift of what the world would look like. But this is a snapshot of what it could be. $64 trillion GDP by 2030. China would be number one country, India number two, and the US number three. So it is a complete power shift. This is, of course, looking at it through the PPP, purchasing power parity, but still, it should be interesting. And so the demographic wave building for the past 80 years is really what powers this whole thing. There's no way to stop it unless there's a nuclear holocaust or a pandemic that kills hundreds of millions of people. There is no stopping this movement. And that's why I worry sometimes that about these pandemics, because that's really the only way to stop a country like China or like India. And I wonder if the if there are forces in the world trying to figure out how to stop this growth. But when you look at China in terms of its cities have the population of entire countries, no, and that's very impressive. And when you look at it at a as a mega region, because obviously we're going to talk about mega cities in this course, or actually we already talked about mega cities in this course. But look at this. I mean, Beijing, Tianjin, you're talking of $1.1 trillion economic mega city. The Yangtze River Delta, 2.62. That's unbelievable. And then the Pearl River Delta is $1.89 trillion. That's unbelievable. These are a combination of multiple cities that are fusing into mega cities, and they're going to be like 130 million people, 120 million people. But look at the economic output. I mean, literally, it is going to be impressive. This has made that the Brookings Institute, which is a very respected research institute, And Homie, there's a person called Homie Karas who also works, does things for the OECD and for Brookings, but um, they put out a report on the middle class a few years ago, and it was, what they're looking at is China's there's multiple trends converging, but it's not only that they have the demographics in their favor, it's there's also the middle class component, and we're basically seeing the most rapid expansion of the middle class in history that the world has ever seen. And what does that mean? That means that the projections are there. We're basically adding a billion people into the middle class every 7 years, and that is what actually changes the center of gravity, because the middle class is now at these volumes. These are the folks that have the gold, no? So this is what it looks like in terms of middle class spending, but it literally could go to $64 trillion, which is a third of the global economy. That is unbelievable. It's currently, running at 35 trillion, but when we're talking about going to 64, that really is starting to now, you know, dominate the entire landscape. And then, of course, where is that middle class located and where is it growing? Obviously, Asia Pacific, China, and India. So, in bottom line, that means that 88% of the next billion people that come into the middle class will be in Asia. And that's why Asia would represent two-thirds of the global middle class population by 2030. And look at the numbers coming in from the rest of the world. I mean, India, China, the rest of Asia, and the rest of the world. This includes the U.S., Brazil, Mexico, all of Europe, all of Africa, all of Latin America, Canada. I mean, the rest of the world is just not growing fast enough, and that's why there's going to be a global power shift. So this is what it looks like, the middle class consumption in 2015, and look at what it looks like in 2030. Let me go back so you can see it again, but it is very impressive. And even though Mexico grows and Brazil grows, but it is dwarfed. Look at where India was and where China was, but the volumes are just they just explode over the next coming decade. So obviously this is going to create these mega cities, this rapid urbanization, and it's going to create a lot of problems in terms of the city, how to provide schools and carbon emissions and cars and transportation, and that's why we saw these mega solutions for mega cities, because we're going to need some amazing solutions in the next decade just to keep up with the pace of change and the pace of growth. And obviously the toll on the planet is just unbelievable. The amount of demand for commodities, cement and aluminum and steel and gold. I mean, it is really it's something to watch. And as we saw in the videos, there are entire countries that are changing, like Brazil, that is now providing soybeans for China, and you guys will see in these videos, it is literally changing the economics and the politics of the country. So this is from the OECD, but this is what it looks like. So again, this was Homie Karas, and if you look at India in orange and China in red, so right now we're here, and right now the U.S. and Europe is still, they're still somewhat a larger percentage. But if you see what the U.S. is going to become, and it's going to become just a few percentage points. So this is definitely the decline of the US unless they figure something out. And by the way, I don't discount them, but they don't have the demographics in their favor. But that something might be artificial intelligence if they jump on board, because right now the only folks that have jumped on board are basically corporations, but the government has not been, really supportive the way that the government is supportive of artificial intelligence in Asia, in particular in China. So again, just so you guys can see how this will grow, I mean, look at the, again, this is with a PPP view, but if you look at this, you know, Asia's slice of the global GDP pie is going to go from 20% to 28%, now to 35%, and obviously that's where the this power shift occurs. So what does that mean? In actually our very own Dr. Aribel Contreras, which is the head of the global business department, she actually has coined the phrase uh, the new Cold War 2.0. So China and US are engaged in this new Cold War, and I'll show you why. This is the US China trade war and who dominates global trade, and this basically chart in the bluer you are, it means that you're trading with the US. The red trades with China, and the ones in these diffused colors are basically equal, half China, half US. Obviously, that was 1980. This is 1990. So you can see that the US was quickly expanding their multinationals, their policies, their views, their movies, their content, their language, their view of the world, and that continued well into 2000. However, you started having these pockets of countries that were beginning. China was starting to enact its vision, and as they've implemented the Belt and Road Initiative, and they've grown and they've grown and they've grown, they have expanded not only to Asia to dominate Asia Pacific, but also, now they have secured. Basically, they started with Russia, and then they moved into Europe, and of course Middle East, and of course India, and of course Africa, and now they're moving into Latin America. And look at the last picture. It's a very telling story. Even many countries in Europe are now, like Spain and Germany and Switzerland, are clearly, on the China side of things, because, yeah, and Scandinavia is getting there too, because of their trade relationship. There's only a few countries that are still holding out, which is the UK and France, and a few others, but it's really changing, and that's why Mexico, believe it or not, Mexico is actually going to be the last frontier and the biggest battle in terms of this red wave expanding through the world. And we were already seeing huge Chinese investments coming into Mexico. Mexico is a prime location for Chinese investments because of its proximity to the US, but China is definitely trying to secure Mexico's alliance. And that is going to be very interesting to see. But in the elections for 2024, and that's what the debates are about, the elections for 2024 in Mexico in 2030, there's going to be a lot of topics related to China. Now, take into consideration that because of TEMEC rules in the North American Free Trade Agreement, renewal, this TEMEC, we are forbidden. Mexico is forbidden from joining the Belt and Road Initiative. So it cannot be a direct, kind of Belt and Road country. But there's a lot of ways around those, those rules, and it definitely doesn't prohibit Chinese investment in Mexico. and especially corporate Chinese investment. So not at the government level like the Belt and Road Initiative, but the corporate. And so yes, I believe that Mexico is going to have a very it's going to be they're going to be fighting for Mexico between China and the US, and that can only benefit us if we're prepared and we take advantage of the opportunities. That's why, we have to keep our eyes open for those things and see how they evolve. If investment was electricity, this is how the this is how the map of the world would look at night, with the investment that has come from China through the Belt and Road Initiative across the world. And as you can see, Mexico is starting to light up, and it is very impressive. It is very impressive what they have done, and of course, a lot of it is that that Belt and Road map, but which has a water. There's a water connection through the Middle East into the Mediterranean to Europe, and then there's also a rail connection through Kazakhstan and Russia and Ukraine and into Europe. So there's a lot of activity going on, but definitely this is going to be something very interesting to follow. This map is only going to get more and more and more red over time. And this is the effect of that. So there's a lot of companies that are now, China was open for business, but now they're not. Now they're not. Now they're not accepting, because now they're innovating. So now they're acting a little bit more protective of their economy. And now the US is starting to copy the companies in China, which is unbelievable, the fact that that is happening. But yeah, eBay, Yahoo, Google, all these companies have faced U-turns, major U-turns. Um, and well, that's just the reality of things. So it is sad, but it is true. So China is also investing on Indian startups. So they're not only looking at the Chinese, marketplace, but they're also looking at the second largest marketplace in the world, which is going to be India. So that's another thing, that basically China is going to be right there, having a premier pole position in Indian investments, and they're going to have a hand in building India into the second largest powerhouse in the world, and that obviously is going to have a huge repercussions for them as well. So that's also something to keep in mind. This is a map of the Belt and Road Initiative. So you can see the original Silk Road, upon which the Belt and Road Initiative was constructed, was also, sort of a land silk economic belt. And then but now there's two. This is the belt, which is a waterway connection. And then this is how that the road has evolved. So the infrastructure, what the Belt and Road Initiative is China at the country level comes in to the governments of all these countries and does deals for infrastructure investment. So they're investing in ports, they're investing in roads, they're investing in trains, they're investing in dams for hydroelectricity, they're investing in just all sorts of infrastructure projects, and that's what's going on. So you can see the evolution of the Belt and Road Initiative, and definitely that's how the wave has basically gotten to Latin America, and is now going to basically end up, you know, um, the immovable force, the immovable object, and the irresistible force are going to clash in Mexico. somewhere sometime in the next 5 years. So that should be very interesting to see. Um, these are the Chinese investments, and you can see that they focused a lot on energy, on transportation, real estate, metals, everything they need to continue their growth. And so it's going to be very interesting. But for them, it's all about finding ways, places to sell their products and ways to get the products to those places. So that's why the infrastructure is so important, rails and planes and boats, and because they need to get all these things so that they can deliver in 24 to 48 to 72 hours anywhere in the world all of their products, and they become really the new sort of Amazon of the world, no? In the bigger picture of things, that's kind of how they see themselves. And you know, it's interesting, but the time, there was the Komen and Mestieri did an analysis, and the time between invention and widespread use was cut from about 80 years for the steam engine to 40 years for electricity, and then about 20 years for IT. And this means that we're really adopting technology at a faster and faster pace, and that's why artificial intelligence, it might actually be 10 years. So this next decade might actually be the crucial decade for figuring out whoever dominates. Brookings basically says that whomever dominates the AI landscape by 2030 will likely dominate, until the end of the century. So that's going to be very, very interesting to see. And that's basically the new China, xie which means thank you. And if you haven't gone to China, or if you don't know about China, I hope that after the 2 weeks that we're going to spend looking at China, you realize that that is where the future lies. We need to learn Mandarin. Mexico needs to learn Mandarin, needs to learn the Chinese culture, the Chinese customs, because it's going to impact everything. Movies will be made for China. Content will be made for China. We already saw that with the movie Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim was a movie that Guillermo del Toro made to compete with Transformers, but it basically was an amazing, homage to Godzilla. So it was a complete failure. He spent $200 million. It was a complete failure in the United States, but it was a multi-million dollar success in China and in the rest of Asia. And that's why the studios in Hollywood greenlit the second installment of Pacific Rim, which that would have never happened before. In order to be a successful movie and get a second and get a sequel, you needed to be successful in the United States. That no longer is the case. That's a good example of how content is going to evolve. If you look at the new DreamWorks movie about the Abominable Snowman, the Everest movie, that's another huge change. The girl is Chinese, the storyline is Chinese, the cities are authentic. If you can compare that movie, and by the way, obviously it did better in Asia than it did in the US, but if you compare that movie with just the movie by the same studio, by DreamWorks, a previous movie that they made, which was the Kung Fu Panda, trilogy, it is completely different. And so now the studio, DreamWorks, is catering to the Chinese market and is designing for the Chinese market. And movies and content and iPhones and everything is going to change right in front of our eyes over the next decade, because it's going to be made for the Chinese consumer, no longer the American consumer. And that is going to be a huge change across everything we know: products, services, content, Hollywood movies, TV shows, books, everything. And so, that is why Mexico needs to jump ahead of this and get to know China, learn its culture, get to know India, learn its culture, and figure out ways to do business with them. Good luck, and we'll see you in the videos. Bye-bye.